Hey guys, today I'm going to walk you through some ideas you could use to compose a melody for your song. Before you can start actually composing the melody, it'd probably be a good idea to choose a good sound for the melody. So as we discussed in class, many of the good sounds will be in synthesizer lead. And just to give you a demonstration here, I selected this one called Glassy FM lead. FM stands for filter modulation. And it sounds like this. It's got some reverb and delayerity on it, but you can turn those off if you don't like them. I kind of like it on there. You can also experiment with these kind of controls down here to get to change the sound a little bit. I also mentioned in class that you can try some other things too. Here's a marimba, which is like a big old xylophone. Good for short notes. It doesn't have much sustain. The pipa is an old Chinese instrument. And there's another one that's kind of guitar-y. But there's a lot of things you could try. Just as I mentioned in class, things you might want to stay away from would be things like pads and rhythmic and arpeggiator ones. Like these rhythmic ones here, not so good for doing a melody. Good for background parts, but not really so good for doing a melody. So first of all, you've got to think about, once you've chosen a sound, you want to think about which notes to use. And because most of you are playing in A minor, in the key of A minor, because of the chords you selected, that means it's really easy. You're using the white notes, not the black keys on the keyboard, and A is your most important note. If you want to try something a little bit more advanced, instead of using the whole A minor scale, which is A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, you can use the A pentatonic scale, which sounds like this. It's essentially the same as the minor scale, but I left out the B and the F. So it goes A, C, D, E, G, A. And by leaving out some of the notes, it makes it possibly a little bit easier. I don't know, for you it might be easier, it might be harder. It might be easier because you have to play fewer notes, or it might be harder because you have to remember which notes to leave out. But either way, A is always going to be the most important note of your scale, and the way you can express this importance is when you play phrases by starting and ending on the note A, or as we're going to discuss shortly, perhaps not starting and ending on note A to amplify its importance even more, to make it more obvious. So here's what we're playing over. So it's a 4-bar loop. It's 2 bars of A minor and 2 bars of G. And here you can see 4 bars here and 4 bars here. I've just repeated it. So here are some things to try. First of all, the whole idea of phrasing. Remember, phrasing just means don't play all the time. Leave some gaps. So I'm going to do a little example of, let's say, some 2-bar phrases over this 4-bar pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's one phrase. It's like an answering phrase. Here's another one. And you could hear in that one I just played that my first phrase was quite busy and the answering phrase to it was less busy. It had a lot fewer notes. So there's some things you could try there. Also, leaving more space perhaps between your phrases could be a good technique. Let's see how that's going to sound. Also note that I'm starting my phrases on A. I'm not necessarily ending them on A right now. Here's another one with space. So you can see those ideas. I'm leaving spaces and creating phrases by the spaces that I leave. Another cool idea that you could use is repetition. And by repetition, I mean literally repeating notes like this, but also repeating the phrases, and you can also change parts of the phrase. So just without the backing track, here's some examples of some phrases that use repetition within repetition of notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can hear that da 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 da. I'm repeating that note for emphasis. And now here's some ideas that use repetition, both in terms of repeating specific notes within a phrase, but also repeating phrases but changing the ending of the phrases. And as a listener, we love hearing repetition because it gives us something to latch onto. It's actually way more enjoyable to listen to something with a little bit of repetition rather than just something where you're always trying to do something new every single bar. It's actually exhausting for the listener to hear that. I've also been using combinations of long and short notes. Things like that, having a phrase maybe start with short notes and end with long notes. And lastly, this idea that I've also been using in some of these examples of within the scale, thinking about using mostly short, small steps between the notes of the scale, and maybe ending a phrase or having within the phrase a larger leap. For instance, I'll start this time not on A, I'll start on E this time. Here's some small steps. So just going down or up by one step within the scale. And then I'm going to do a leap at the end. From that second last note to there is a big jump. So let's hear how that sounds. And again, you heard there's some repetition and some use of small steps and larger leaps. I hope that was useful for you.